Folks, welcome to the second session today, which is Practical AI for Nonprofits. Thanks for joining in on a Monday afternoon. We're super excited to take you through the next what we have in store for you in the next 1.5 hours. But before that, we want to introduce you to Meera. Folks who might have joined the first session might know about Meera. Folks who might have missed it, for them, a brief introduction to who Meera is. So Meera is a monitoring and evaluation lead who's working in an education sector NGO. And in her last session, we saw her facing a challenge in her work where she used to collect a lot of data across her programs, but she was having trouble converting all of that raw data into reliable insight. Well, and in the last session, what she learned was this concept of a data lifecycle for specifically her use case, wherein she learns how to plan, collect, store, act, and finally draw insights from her data. So this is where we left her off, and she was at a point where she was feeling pretty empowered with data. But like all superheroes do, in this session, she has a new challenge. She's been hearing about this concept of AI in her day-to-day work everywhere, just like all of us have. She's been looking up posts on LinkedIn, she's been hearing about it from funders, etc. And while she knows that it is an emerging technology that is valuable to her, she just wonders that what does it really mean for her in context of what she does in her day-to-day work? And what are some of the ways in which she can utilize AI in a way that it helps assist her work and not add to the noise that's already present and existing out there in the environment? So, in this session, what we're going to do is try to understand what AI can do for us in a very practical way, what it cannot do as well, where it can be useful for us and where it cannot be useful for us. And we'll do this by identifying or having a general framework for identifying what is suitable to work through AI, learning some practical hands-on tips, tricks, as well as skills to identify where is it that we can absorb AI in our day-to-day, as well as learn about a few tools in the process. So, we are going to be talking about low cost practical tools in this session, but we're not going to be sharing which are the best tools for what use case. So, our session might not meet that expectation. Now, with this, we also want to be able to, what we also want to be able to do at the end of this session is if today AI poses as this vague terminology, which invokes pressure in terms of how is it that we should absorb it in our day-to-day work, at the end of it, we should be able to look at it from a point of view of curiosity and possibility, and with a very definite idea of what it can do for us. With this, I think the first question we all are ask ourselves and probably know about is what is it that AI can do? And what is it that it was capable of doing? And when we were also thinking about it in context of this session, we thought it would be helpful for us to understand the capabilities of AI using verbs. And these are the verbs that we came up with. At its very core, what AI can do is learn. So whatever we tell it, it can learn and it can become better with time to assist us with the knowledge that we have shared with it. It can create things by itself, given the right instructions and the right prompting. It can analyze things for us, such as the program data that is sitting in our spreadsheets and has some kind of a trend analysis to it that we have not discovered yet. It can do things by itself in an autonomous fashion, given that there is some pattern, the right instruction given to it, as well as some level of supervision. And finally, to summarize all of this, it is most importantly an assistive technology. It is something that can assist us become better at our day-to-day jobs and our roles. And this forms the core of how AI can help us in our daily work. With this, we're going to do a small exercise. I'll pause over here and put up Pratiksha, if you could put up a Zoom poll on the screen where if you could think about what are the 1, 2 verbs where AI feels useful for your work and share it with us. The poll should be on your screen right now.
Yeah, I've launched it. And we'll revisit what your answer to this question is towards the end, and we'll see if you feel like you've made any progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the examples of how you should think about it, or you could think about it, is in terms of the verbs like writing, analyzing, prompting, automating, etc. A lot of trends that we saw in our past session as well. We have around 5 responses. We'll
Fill
wait
it
for a
out
couple.
in the poll if possible and not in the chat.
Oh, are we getting responses in the chat as well?
Yeah, just one, but yeah, fill it out in the poll so that we can also understand where most of you are inclined to automation with AI.
Yeah, and if you'd like, you can unmute and share your answer as
Mhm.
well if you're comfortable.
Mhm.
We'd love to have a volunteer.
Okay, we've got 13 out of 13 answers.
We'll wait for 1 minute more. I think there are some responses coming in. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now, and
Share
we'll see if
result.
we can. We'll see if I can drop the responses over here.
I've shared the results.
Awesome. So, are you able to see the results on your screen?
Are you guys able to?
Okay. If not, I can read it out as well. Some
Hmm.
of the verbs that we've got is writing. What we've also got is analyzing, reports, identifying, geographical coaching. And let me just try to share my screen again and see if I'm able to. Are you able to see the Zoom poll? Okay, never mind. So I think this was an interesting exercise, and the reason we wanted to do this was for all of us to introspect that what is it in terms of one action verb that we can anchor our AI, or what we think is suitable for AI to do.
Yeah, and
And
you can
with
keep that in, sorry to interrupt you, but you can just keep that use case in mind while you listen to our presentation today. And if you have any questions at any point about, any of the specifics we're talking about, feel free to just raise your hand or ping the question in the chat. Someone will be monitoring it. Continue, Stuti.
yeah, sounds good. So, with that lens in mind, for example, if you wrote something like an analyze when you were doing this exercise, as we saw a lot of folks do, I think the next question that generally comes to us is that, okay, I've realized that I want to use an AI tool to analyze data. But will AI be able to deliver on the analysis that I'm looking for becomes the next line of questioning, right, for us. And we think of, and in this case, it helps to think of AI as a person we are hiring, and we are looking for whether the person is fit for the job that we're looking for it to do. And in a lot of ways, the job description for AI is that, hey, you should be able to handle, say, complex analysis. You should be able to do some kind of ideation, and you should be able to do everything end to end. So if I have a task and it needs to be done from right from the analysis to the pattern recognition to what is it that an insight is from my program data, you should be able to deliver it. But as with any person, this might be an unrealistic expectation from any AI tool or any AI activity that we give to it. So, thinking about it differently, if we are thinking of an analysis use case, we have to think about whether AI can do the job in terms of these things. If an analysis or if any kind of a work is repetitive or has some kind of a pattern to it, chances are AI can replicate it and do it really well. Is 70-80% of it automatable, meaning that is there some kind of, once again, pattern to how the intelligence can replicate, understand the job, and then do it with accuracy, 100% accuracy, again and again? Once again, if it is, then AI can do the job really well. Is it backstage? By that we mean that are we using AI for our internal work or our internal end user beneficiary work? If it is for our internal work, the risk of using AI and to verify its accuracy becomes easier because the risk once again there is lesser. And finally, with with anyone, I think there is some level of supervision involved or some level of backstopping involved. So in the case of AI, has to be a human review at every point of identifying whether it's doing the job right from time to time. And this becomes and the framework for us to follow in terms of any job we pick for a AI tool to do. And this is where the next question comes up that, okay, now I know that an analysis is ready and I want to find out what is the solution for it. But when we think of a solution, we think of a tool or we think about where is it that we can go to do, say, a program data analysis. And we think of tools like GPT, we think of tools like Perplexity, depending on our use case. The next questions that come up there is that which tool is free, practical, and right for my use case. And while there is no standard response for that, because that differs from GPT to GPT, differs from tool to tool, and once again differs from changes to changes on an everyday, what we have attempted to do is create a laundry list of tools that are friendly for non-profit pricing as well as fit for every category of use case. This is not going to be the focal point of our conversation today because it is very subjective. We've attached this as a resource for you to go ahead and look at it at a later point of time. If you're looking for category level information on a case by case basis, that is something that we can circle back at a later point. So, with this, now we come to an exercise time where we're going to see how all of what we spoke about marries into a real life example with AI, and Pratiksha is going to help us take us through that exercise.
Yes.
Over to
Thank
you,
you so much,
Pratiksha.
Priti. And you guys can take a look at the tools yourself. The links will be in the slide, and there's always going to be some Q&A time at the end, so we can address more stuff along those lines towards the end. For now, what my goal is as someone who is an AI engineer, has worked as an AI engineer for a while now, I want to show you how you can simplify what probably an AI engineer would do to solve a problem yourselves as non-technical, non-coding folks. So the stuff that I want to show you is actually very recent AI capabilities. This isn't something that would have been possible to this level even a year ago. And I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get started. And you guys can let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Okay. Um, so what I'm using right now is a tool called Google Colab. Some of you may be familiar with it. I would think most of you are not. So what colab.research.google.com, what this website does is it allows you to have code on your browser that you can then run. So you don't need to install any, coding environments in your computer, set anything up. If someone's written code for you, you can just open it up on a link in your browser itself in Google Chrome and then run the code there and get the results. So for people who maybe wouldn't know how to set up coding environments on their computer, this is something that will come like in a container for you that you can just work with. So very low setup, very easy to work with. And I have a little bit of an exercise that's put over here in a Colab notebook. So what I'm going to do before I begin is I'm just going to share the link of the Colab notebook with you guys in the chat. 1 second, I might have to stop screen sharing for that. And those of you who want to, you can follow along with the activity. Although at this point, I would really recommend that you kind of focus and listen in because I'll be explaining a lot of stuff. And the link to the Colab notebook will be in the deck, and you guys can try this out on your own time as well. That would be my recommendation. And because I can't see the chat, like feel free to unmute yourselves and ask questions if you have any. I'm happy to be interrupted. So yeah, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at some code, which any one of you can actually use and modify and adapt to do two main things. One is data cleaning, and the other is qualitative data analysis. And the code over here that you see on the screen might look a little bit intimidating, like there's a lot of stuff going on, but we'll break it down and I'll show you just how reusable this particular application would be for you. Um, and before we get into that, there's a few conceptual things that I want to explain to you guys. Some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not be. Uh, the first concept is what is a prompt, right? Most of you have probably heard of this term, but if for any of you who haven't, a prompt is essentially just a very descriptive piece of text that you give to an LLM like a chat GPT or a Gemini, where you explain to it what your requirements are, and then it comes back to you with an answer. So you hear this fancy term called prompt engineering thrown around a lot. There's no real engineering to it. It's only about writing very descriptively in great detail. The engineering aspect of it is probably just understanding how an LLM responds to what we give it, right? And we'll try to bridge that gap today a little bit. So that's what a prompt is to get started with. And secondly, what's an API key? Because that's something that we'll be using in this activity as well today. So we're all probably familiar with chatbots like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini. But when you're looking at enterprise level AI applications, they don't happen through these chatbots. You don't have individual people sitting there having conversations with ChatGPT. What you have is actually people writing code and running code. And within the code, you make requests to ChatGPT through the backend, to Gemini through the backend, and then the code itself handles that level of communication. Now, for that communication to happen, what you need to have is something called an API key. So that's a way that ChatGPT can keep track of who you are, what are your questions, how many questions have you asked, um, how many tokens have you used? And if you don't understand that, that's something I'll explain a little bit later as well. But that API key is something that you'll have to generate for yourself, for your organization. And it usually does charge you, although the amount it charges you per time you use it is quite low. But if you end up using it in larger quantities for larger enterprise applications, that number can go up. But for today's activity, what I've done is I've put in one of our like Dalgo Tech for Devs API keys, and we'll have that API key stay active on this notebook for a few days so that you guys can also do some experimentation before we delete that from the account. Um, Hopefully that clarified the concept. And if you guys have any questions, ask me. I've already told you guys what Colab is. And now I guess the biggest question that a lot of you probably have in your mind is, when we're trying to learn how to use AI, why are we looking at code in a Colab notebook? Why are we not looking at how we can use tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Claude? One main reason is that a lot of you are already using those tools. I don't think that I'd want to go back to the basics to that level in terms of saying, hey, here's a box where you type in a prompt and then ChatGPT will give you a response. But also, like I said, in enterprise applications, those are not really useful because they don't scale up, right? Suppose you know that there is this particular data task that needs to happen every month. What we don't want is to have employees spending their bandwidth every month going in, talking to ChatGPT, writing a prompt, uploading a sheet. Like, we don't want that because that's not an automated workflow. If you actually want to have an automated workflow, then code is the way you go about doing it. Now, which is why I'm showing you how you can do that. So let me just reset this. So those of you who want to try this out by yourselves, you can open up the link. You'll have view access, not edit, but you can make a copy of this sheet and then try it by yourself when you have time. For now, I'm just going to restart the notebook. And another good thing about tools like this is when you're using the notebook, if you get confused about something, that's when you can go to ChatGPT, ask it a question, and it'll clarify things for you. But yeah, let's just take a quick look at the notebook now, and you'll see that there's a lot of code over here, right? A lot of things happening. And this might feel a little bit intimidating to you guys, that there's no way if I have a custom use case that I need to automate or get some stuff done for, I'll never be able to create something like this notebook and automate. Is probably what you guys are thinking because most of you are not coders. Um, which is why when I was preparing for this workshop, I decided that I wouldn't write a single line of this code by myself. None of this code has been written by me. So I am a programmer, and even when there were small fixes that were bugging me that I knew how to fix, I didn't fix them by myself. What I actually did to get this code here is I had ChatGPT generated for me with nothing but giving it my requirements in English. And what I've also done is I've taken this chat that I had with ChatGPT, where I've had it generate the Colab notebook for me, where I've given it my detailed requirements, where I've done a lot of back and forth and debugging with it. I've put a link to that conversation with ChatGPT into our deck. So if you go to the webinar deck and you go right to the bottom, there'll be a resources slide where you'll see a link to the chat. So you'll actually be able to see how I got it to create this notebook in the first place. And this is something that you need some conceptual understanding for, but you don't really need to know how to code. And that conceptual understanding is something anyone can build out through experience and even through having conversations with ChatGPT. So don't be too intimidated by what you're seeing. Um, Now, before I actually go ahead into the execution and explaining what's happening in the document, are there any quick questions, or can we move on? Okay, I saw one thumbs up, so I'm going to move on. Oh, one more fun fact is that Colab has a Gemini chatbot built into it over here. So if you have code that's failing or error messages that you're getting, you can speak to Gemini right here in Colab, send it questions, and it can actually run the code for you, debug it, and fix it. So you have the chatbot that comes up over here on the side, which is another very cool feature that makes Colab great for you guys to use. Awesome. All right. So what we're going to do now in this workshop is, one second. One of the sheets is closed. I'll just need to open it up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, here we go. So what I have two Google Sheets over here. One of them contains, these are all demo data, by the way, not real data. So one of the Google Sheets that I have over here contains information about imaginary beneficiaries getting services across different programs and different sectors. We have consent information, village information. But what you'll see is that the data over here is a bit messy. It's not been cleaned up or standardized yet. Like, you can look at the status column as an example of how we have many different values. We have many different ways of people saying yes or no in the consent and in the is farmer field, because the data collection tool hasn't been set up properly. So we have messy data over here. So this is one sheet on which we'll do an example of how easy data cleaning can be with code. And then I have another sheet over here where I have demo data for qualitative feedback that people have given to the construction of a well in their village. So I'll share the links to these two sheets with you guys as well. Give me a second in case you'll want to follow along with the same sheets when you do this activity yourselves. Let me just ping that to you guys, and then I'll go back to sharing my screen. So that's the link to one. This is the link to the other document. And the goal in this activity for us will be able to understand the qualitative data, summarize it without us having to actually read through it ourselves and analyze it manually. And for data cleaning, the goal for us will be that we just think about what needs to happen in the sheet and it happens, that we don't have to go in and do the cleaning ourselves. And we'll see how that will work when you have code generated for you by ChatGPT. So now with all of that preface set in, let's go and actually start doing a few runs. So now over here, I have an initial statement over here. It's just a piece of code that we need to run where it'll pull in some libraries and some packages that your code will need to work. And yeah. And once that's been done over here, this is the part where your input will be needed, and it clearly says edit me, right? So it's asking you for a few pieces of information over here. So what you'll need to, oh, restart session. Yeah, what you'll need to do is you'll need to put in your OpenAI API key. We already talked about what this is. And you'll be able to generate that for your own organizations yourselves. And then you can pick what ChatGPT model you want to speak to. Now, what models are available is written over here in the code. GPT-4o Mini, GPT-4o Mini. So these are different models created by OpenAI, different LLMs, which are capable of different levels of complexity in tasks. And you can Google these if you want to really understand the breakdown. But by default, the sheet comes with the smallest model filled in already. And the reason we start with the smallest model is that the smaller models are always lesser expensive, usually, the ones that are capable of solving less complex tasks. And you usually want to start with those. And if those aren't working for your particular task, that's when you want to try the more expensive models and then see if the cost benefit works out for your organization. Right? So we put in the model, and then we have a few other things we need to put in about the data that we're trying to read. So as it says over here, as it explains, we need to put in the link to the Google Sheet that we want to do the data cleaning for. And I've gone ahead and done that. And over here, we need to put the name of the specific worksheet. So what does that mean? What that means is in this sheet where I have the beneficiary data, the name of the particular tab that I want to read, because it's possible for me to have multiple tabs. And let me just actually go ahead and delete the other tab. So I've gone ahead and I've put down the name over here of the sheet. And then what it's asking for over here is where should it store the cleaned data? So you can just put down any name you want. The name that I've put down is cleaned data. And then we have to,
Pratiksha,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt.
yeah.
Could you check the sharing settings for the collab?
Oh, is it, are you not
Just
able
seeing
to open it?
that folks are not able to open it.
Anyone with the link is a viewer, is what it says. Let me just copy and paste the link again. I've set it to be publicly accessible. Can you try it once, Titi?
I'm able to access it,
Okay,
but I'm
so
on another account. So
it
just
should
want to
be
make sure that
accessible
folks.
on any account. If it's not, then maybe we can debug that with you towards the end of the call. But from my side, the settings have been configured correctly.
Yeah,
Right.
Aditya, are you able to access it since you shared that you weren't able to do it before? Okay, I can see that Prashant and Suresh are able to, so we can move ahead.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
so it's Pooja.
So you can just
Awesome.
hide the code here if you want to. You don't even need to see it. It gives you this nice interface for you to put stuff in. And yeah, and then we repeat that process again for the qualitative data sheet. I've put in the link to the sheet. I've put in the name of the tab. And then what it asks you for qualitative data is the name of the specific column where the qualitative data lives. And I've put in that as well as the output name that I want for the results. So then you can just go ahead and run this and it'll initialize with these values. Now, over here, it clearly says no edits required. You can just go ahead and run this block of code by clicking this like this. It'll run a block for you. And over here is where the actual data cleaning aspect begins after the setup has been done. And it tells you what's going to happen in this bit of code. Again, we can collapse the code if you want to. And when we go ahead and run it, what we'll see happen, oops, data cleaning sheet URL. That's because I didn't run it in order. Okay, yeah. Cool. So what it does is it goes ahead and for data cleaning, it reads the sheet that I've given, reads all the rows I have. I think I have 185 rows now in 17 columns. And then it shows you a sample of that information, which means that now it has access to the information that you want to clean up. So right over here, it clearly says edit me, right? So you know that this is where you need to go in and do some stuff now. So describe what you want cleaned. So you can put in an example of what kind of data cleaning that you want to happen on the sheet. And it gives you a few examples of how to word things by putting in formats, putting in examples, etc. So what I've gone ahead and done when I've been prepping for the workshop is I've taken a look at the sample data. Over here. And the main problem that sprung out to me was the lack of standardization in the columns for consent and for is farmer. right? You won't be able to build pie charts or anything when the data is messy like this. So what I've said over here in the prompt is standardize the consent and is farmer columns to have yes, no values. That's all. And then I went ahead and I ran this particular block of code. We call blocks of code cells in Google Colab. And what this does in the backend now is this will take your instruction where you've said what you need to happen. It'll take that, it'll take the columns in your Google Sheet, a sample of the values in your Google Sheet, and it'll bundle all of this up together and it'll push it to OpenAI or the ChatGPT, the LLM. The LLM will then see all of this, and keeping all of this in mind, it'll write the code for you for your specific use case and the specific problem that you have described over here. It'll write the code, and then that code, you will be able to run it. So over here, you can see it says generated cleaning code, and it shows you the code that it generated. Now, you don't really need to understand this to be able to make this work. So what you can do is you can then approve and run. So let me just close out the code over here. Yeah, you can approve it and then you can run this cell. 1 second, let me just restart and run all because I think I've missed a few at the top. So when you do restart and run all, it'll run everything from top to bottom again. And now what happens is that when we run this, it runs the code that was generated by OpenAI for the cleanup, and then it saves the result as a new tab back in the original Google Sheet that we have. And now we'll keep discussing, but we'll give it a minute for stuff to run. We have a few things still running upstream, I think, over here. And when it finishes running and when we come back to it, we'll see that the cleaned results have been saved in the sheet. And we'll take a look at how well it performed. Yeah.
I think good time to pause for questions as well.
Yeah, if anyone has questions while we're waiting for the run to happen, we can go ahead and do that.
So Suresh has a question, Diksha. Is
Yes.
Colab free to use and are there
Yes.
any limits?
There's no limits. I think there will be limits with the Gemini that's there in Colab, but Colab itself is completely free to use. So now I'm running
Okay.
stuff one by one. Cool. And now let's approve and run. So what it's done is now it says cleaning complete, results written to clean data in, and this is the same Google Sheet. I'm pretty sure it's the same one. Let's check. Yeah. So now we have this cleaned tab that's automatically been put in by the Colab notebook. I did not create this manually. And then I don't know how visible this is on my screen. But yeah, you can see that the chaotic values that we had before in the consent field and in the is farmer field have been standardized to yes, no values. So this is the end result now, and this is what it was before. And the only thing I had to do was put in a sentence describing what I want. Now, this was a very simple use case of the kind of cleanups that can happen. But when you have more complicated tasks with more complicated things you need to happen, like, maybe pivoting, standardizing date formats when you have both American and British dates, it doesn't matter. AI can generate code to do all of that stuff. But with more complex tasks, what will happen is your prompt will need to get much longer and much more detailed. And you'll need to put in examples and craft your prompt very well. And that's actually after the exercise, the next part of the workshop that we look at is how to craft your prompts really well for more complex use cases. And we'll deal with that then. Now, the second part of the exercise is qualitative data analysis. So for that, I have this sheet with the reviews of the wells, and I've sent this sheet to you guys as well. You can go through it. And I've made sure that the qualitative data that I have on purpose has been written with bad English, bad spelling, bad grammar, the way it usually is when it comes in from beneficiaries. And these are in English, but even if your data is in Hindi, you can just push it to an LLM to do the same thing, qualitative data analysis, right? So what this does now is over here, it says what it does. It loads the data. So right now it's loaded the qualitative data that I put in, and it did that from the link that I pasted. And now it says, qualitative prompts, edit me. So in this case, you maybe don't necessarily need to edit, but what you can see over here are the prompts that I'm sending to OpenAI, right? So I'm making it do a few things. I'm making it do sentiment analysis, which is how positive or how negative are the reviews. I'm making it summarize all of the reviews for me, and I'm making it classify the reviews into themes. These three things. And for each of these three things that I'm making it do, I have custom prompts. The better the results you want, the more detailed your prompt has to be. And what I've put in here are not perfect prompts, but good enough for the sake of this workshop. And then it asks you to define something called batch size, which means how many rows of your sheet do you want to send to OpenAI at a time. Now, this batch size is actually like one of my favorite things about writing code, because you might have noticed that when you try to go to ChatGPT and upload a Google Sheet with like 500 rows in it, it'll say that this is way too long. We can't do it. Right. But when you're doing stuff in code, you can do things like send 10 rows at a time, have it process 10 rows at a time, and then come back with a result. So that's what you can put in yourself over here with the batch size. And let's just run this very quickly. And over here, let's just run this very quickly. So after we run this, it said the prompts are ready. And now what I'm essentially doing is I'm running the last bit of code that's there in the file. And this bit of code is actually doing the analysis. Now, qualitative data analysis is a more complex task than the editing cleanup of the Google Sheet that we did. So this process actually takes a bit of time to run. So this might take 8 to 10 minutes. So what we can do now is we can take a few questions, maybe move on to the next section, and we'll revisit this again in a few minutes and take a look at the results. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. And we also have a couple of questions in the chat, Pratiksha.
Okay.
So, Suresh has a follow-up that is the data with Colab accessible to anyone but the user who uploads it?
No, it's like a Google Sheet on your account. You can
Hmm.
decide who has access to it the same way you decide who has access to a Google Sheet. It's in the Google Drive ecosystem. So if I said nobody has access, then nobody has access. That's it.
Okay. And similar to the Google Suite, is there a community that you can reach out to in case you have any questions with respect to using Colab?
So I would say that first and foremost, reach out to your LLM, like reach out to ChatGPT and other tools like that. If you have questions, if that turns out to not be useful, then my go-to place, there are a few go-to places for me. One, of course, is Stack Overflow. And maybe these are things that I can just show you. So Stack Overflow is a website where people usually go and they post questions about, hey, my code is not working for this reason, that reason. And you have people who are not coders also trying to learn coding, post their questions, and you have a very helpful community on this website. So Stack Overflow would be recommendation number one. Me personally, I love Reddit. I don't know how many of you use Reddit, but there are coding subreddits on Reddit as well with very helpful people where you can just explain, I'm a beginner, I need help, and people will come and help you. The other good place to go if you want to search is something called GitHub issues. So I won't get into the details and explanation of what GitHub is right now, but it's essentially a platform built for coders to share and collaborate on code. And on GitHub itself, people raise and answer a lot of questions. So suppose you're having a particular error like error XYZ, you can search for that on Google and then put in GitHub issues. And then if someone's talked about these issues on GitHub before, you'll be able to find it. Like a link like this will come up where you'll be able to see the problem someone has posted and how they got to that problem. And then there'll be people helping them in the comments. So you can just put in your error, type in GitHub issues, type in Stack Overflow, and you'll find a community there. Hopefully that answers your question. Anything else, Tuti, while we're waiting for this to run, or
Yeah,
else
we can wait for 1 more minute.
for
We'll wait
questions?
for a couple of questions to come in. I think
Yeah.
good time to pause as well.
Otherwise, we can move to the next session and come back if there are no questions. So we'll give it a minute.
Yeah. Pooja has a question. I'm going to read it out. What about data security? Like we have girls' data with their personal information. Is it
Yes.
safe to give that access to AI? And it sets up brilliantly for the next
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
segment as well.
Oh, yeah, we were going to cover this, but this is actually, there is a right answer and then there is a right answer, right? The right answer is that when you look at what OpenAI says on their website, they say that if you're sending them data through their API, that they don't use it for training, they don't share it with anyone. Training, as in they don't use it to teach their models how to respond. One of the big concerns with sharing data with LLMs or to companies like OpenAI is if they take the data of your beneficiaries and then they use it to train their LLMs or teach their LLMs, someday to some third person on the other side of the world using ChatGPT, the LLM may spit out a response which contains the data that's about your beneficiaries. It's like what you teach your child at home, this child will go to school and repeat the same thing. It's the same logic. So, OpenAI says that they don't use the data for training, they don't share it with everyone. But there have been examples of people reporting that this stuff has happened to them, like they've noticed it. So generally, people don't trust sharing data with LLMs. So there's two ways that I think about it, right? One, either the data is not too sensitive, and then you can go ahead and share it with an LLM, or two, the second option is doing something called PII masking. So PII actually stands for personally identifiable information. And you can look up and understand what this is. But essentially, what you can do is you can write a piece of code which actually masks the personal identifiable information. So, what that means is suppose you have beneficiary data like this with a phone number, right? So, it'll randomly move the numbers around, right? Whatever their address is, it'll pick another address in a similar area. So, you have actually frameworks and libraries written to do PII masking. So, pieces of code that you can just pull in and run. You can have ChatGPT write code to do this for you. So once you masked that information, even if it leaks, nobody will be able to use it to track down your beneficiaries. And that's the real test. So PII masking is another option. Otherwise, the most extreme option and the more technically challenging option is to host an LLM locally. So there are big LLMs, LLM as in large language model. That's what ChatGPT and tools have been built on top of. So there are big ones and then there are small ones. You can pick one of the small ones and run it on a local server. So that way the data is not going anywhere outside. So these are a few things that people are doing, but it's something which warrants a lot of internal conversation in your own teams and then figuring out a solution. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
And
we can
before
move.
we do anything else, the results are here now. So I'm not sure exactly how long it took to run, but less than 5 minutes it felt like to me. So what it's done is it's gone ahead and it's added a few sheets in the same document that I've uploaded, and it's showing me a summary over here as well. Right? So it says overall summary, the feedback from respondents indicated generally positive reception. Many individuals expressed satisfaction with clean water taste, convenience of the easy hand pump, highlighting that it had significantly reduced the time spent walking to fetch water. There's a summary over here, pretty long one. I won't read all of it. Some highlights, and then it's also giving you some suggested actions, right? Conduct regular water quality testing to address muddy water concerns, improve communication and management of construction activities. And it says over here, findings are based on qualitative feedback from a diverse group of respondents. So let's go back to the sheet now that we had fed in, this one. And we'll see that other than the tab that we had sent it, there are two new tabs now. So one of that tab says qualitative results, and this one shows you the sentiment analysis of each review. So over here, what it's showing you, can you guys see my screen? Are you able to read
Could you zoom in a bit?
even more?
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
fine.
fine. Yeah.
Okay. So what it's done is for each of these reviews, everyone here is liking the easy hand pump, cattle also getting water fine. It's marked them as being a positive review or a negative review. You can go ahead and analyze this later to see how many positive you have, how many negative, and it's also telling you how positive is it or how negative is it. So this is like 0.85 as an 85% positive. Whereas you might have lower numbers somewhere over here if I find the right kind of review. And if you look at a negative review, this is 75% negative, you can think of as. It's not exactly percentage, it's just something we call a confidence score. I won't get into that right now, but look at this. Some folks are upset with muddy water, waiting was too long. It's marked this as a negative review. So this is something that it would have taken a person such a long time to sit down and say, we got these many positives, these many negatives. I did it so easily now, right? The other thing that it's done is all sorts of summarization tasks over here. Like it shows you highlights. And this what's in this tab is actually what we saw over here, right? It shows you an overall summary. It shows you highlights, good things which are working well, what are like main points, key points that it's extracted, and then suggested actions, and then how it's calculated it. Any questions on this front? And you guys will be able to use this notebook yourself, and I've sent you the link to the sheets as well, so you can run it yourself, take a look. If stuff is not working for you, usually what that means is you need a better crafted, more detailed prompt. But feel free to experiment. And do you guys think this exercise was useful? Having access to this notebook is useful to you guys, and maybe you're a little bit less scared of code, because you'll be able to see how I generated all this code without writing it myself, how I've been able to run it without needing to read. I myself, I haven't read all the code in that notebook. I don't understand how it works because I haven't taken the time to do that. But I don't need to be able to get this to work for me. So any questions before we move on? No? Sorry, how this is different from AppScript. Okay, that's a question from Vivek. So AppScript, first of all, they're different languages if you're speaking from that front. What I've shown you in the Colab notebook has been written in a programming language called Python. AppScript, if I'm not wrong, is written in JavaScript. So they're different programming languages, but AppScript directly integrates into your Google Sheets and your Google Docs. And you can set triggers, you can have it run at a particular time. So you can say, take this column from this sheet and like go merge it with that sheet and run it every day at 10 p.m. And it's a direct integration. Colab is not directly integrated with your Google Sheets, right? It's not something which lives in and around your Google Sheets. The way it's able to read from my Google Sheet right now is because I've put in a link over there, because I've logged in with my Gmail account and my Gmail account has access to the sheet. It's not something that's directly integrated. But in terms of use cases, can you do the same thing on Colab that you can do in AppScript? Logically speaking, yes. But as far as I'm aware, Colab doesn't have triggers. Like you can't say that go run this every day at 10 p.m. the way you can with AppScript. Hope that answers your question. Okay. Let's move on to the next part, Stuti.
Yeah, Pratiksha, you want to quickly talk about the prompting
Yes.
best practices?
How are we doing on time? I know.
We're on a slight crunch, so maybe we can
Okay.
cover it in a
Sure.
short and sweet.
Sure. Can you see the slides on my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is one of the concepts that I said I would come back to later, and I'll quickly explain this to you. So when you're using LLM tools like ChatGPT, there's this concept of token limits. And this concept is actually very connected to what's on the next slide, which is context windows. So what does this mean? This means that these tools, these LLMs have a very limited memory. They forget things you say, right? So suppose you've been wanting it to generate a donor report for you, and you have an example donor report from last year that you've sent it. Now that donor report is 200 pages. What happens is that it won't be able to keep the entire donor report that you've uploaded in its memory. Like even if the upload successfully gets sent to ChatGPT, it doesn't have the memory space for all of that. So this concept of the memory space of an LLM is called a token limit. And the reason it's called a token limit, you can think of it as saying a memory limit, right? A token is roughly equal to 4 characters. So like 4 letters, A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z space. So 4 characters is roughly equal to 1 token. So there's a limit to how many characters it can keep in its memory. So that's what a token limit is. And then there's something called a context window. So this is a related concept. So what happens when a token limit has been exceeded, right? We say that the context window moves down. So there's an image over here which explains it. What this means is, suppose this whole thing over here on the left side is the user input. And the token limit is this red box over here. It exceeds the token limit. So what then happens is the LLM forgets everything from the beginning and only remembers the most recent information in the chat, that is the size of its token limit. So the longer your chat gets, the more it forgets things from the beginning. And this can cause a lot of problems for people if you don't understand the concept of context windows. Because usually the most important context for whatever you're working on is given right at the beginning of the chat, where you're like, hey, I have a donor report on this topic. Now, if the LLM forgets that's when you'll be like, why did this chatbot suddenly become so stupid? Why is it not capable of doing the most simple thing which it was doing for me 10 minutes ago? That happens because the context window has moved down. So it's no longer able to remember the context. And we'll talk about how to manage when this happens in a few slides. And this slide is just there as like a quick tip, which is be careful about chat poisoning, right? So what that means is that within the token limit or the context window of an LLM, suppose you put in a wrong piece of information. Like suppose you say that I want you to generate a bar graph, and then later you go in and say like, no, generate a pie chart. Most of the times it'll be okay. But sometimes if there's conflicting information in its memory right now, that can also mess up the output. And when that happens, we call it chat poisoning, which means that you need to go create a new chat because the memory in this current chat has conflicting information and it's causing the LLM to behave weirdly, right? And another thing which can trigger chat poisoning is actually angry, frustrated, negative behavior. And this is not because the LLM or the chatbot, it doesn't have feelings, but the way it has learned how to talk, how to speak English, how to communicate with people is by seeing how people communicate with each other. And it just tries to pretend and emulate those patterns. And one of the patterns that these chatbots or LLMs have seen is that when people get angry with you, you don't usually tend to respond well or kindly, right? So that's also something that it's learned implicitly. So try not to get frustrated. There's no one on the other side over there trying to like mess with you. And that can be something that ends up poisoning your chat as well. And this is a problem even I have, especially when trying to do things like have it generate code. Any questions on these three before I move on? Okay. All right. Cool. Um, Now, when we come to prompting, right? Hopefully, having done the collab activity together with me has taught you the importance of having good prompts. In fact, if you try the activity yourself and it fails a few times for you, I think you'll really understand the importance of a detailed prompt when you're asking it to do some complicated stuff. So, there are a few general principles that you need to keep in mind, which is you have to be very, very specific and provide examples. So suppose the same thing that we did, standardize the is consent and is farmer fields, right? You should say, put a yes, draw an arrow and say yes, y should become yes, n should become no. Nahi should become no. Give it examples and then give it the context of the task you're trying to solve. What are you recording in the consent column, and give it a format. Like if you go and read my prompts in the Colab, I've given it a specific format to generate the output in. Like generate a JSON structure where you're giving me like 5 bullet points in the summary, where you're giving it to me in this format with these keywords, with this heading. Be very, very specific, because a lot of times we make assumptions that if I told my colleague to do this, she would know how to do this, right? But LLMs don't have that ability to be able to fill in the gaps that humans can. So talk to it the way you would talk to a 5-year-old who's never written a report before, in terms of how detailed you are. Tell it how long you want your output to be, what level of detail you want. You can even ask it to generate stuff in a particular tone of voice or a style, like write this in a comedic style, comedic tone of voice, make this sound very formal, make this sound friendly but professional. You can do all of that. So just some simple prompts over here.
Time check.
Yes, okay. I'll speed through this slide and then hand it over to you. And a few tips and tricks. One, the first step is important over here for managing when the context window problem happens, which is refreshing the memory. So, suppose you feel like your chat is getting too long, that the LLM may start forgetting things, have a prompt to refresh the memory, which means just tell the chat GPT that summarize everything we've done so far and what the requirement of the task is, and just tell that prompt to ChatGPT. So when it does the summarization, even if it forgets everything before, as long as the summarization is in its memory, it'll still behave a little more normally. Right? So that's one tip. The other is when it's you're doing making it do more complex tasks, do some chain of thought thinking, step by step thinking. So what that means is break down the task yourself and give it prompts one step at a time. Or you can do chain of thought thinking, which is when you're having it do research, for example, you can tell it how to think. Like, for example, you can say, use this chain of thought. Start with looking into research papers about this topic. When you find one, then look into how many citations it has, and so on. Much better outputs if you do those two. Uh, and have it Google. So nowadays you have chatbots which have access to Google, but by default, sometimes they don't verify sources. But if you're having it do research tasks, say, check for the answer on Google and then give me the links in a bibliography. So when you tell it to do that, it'll actually verify everything it's saying to you itself before it comes back to you with mistakes. And then finally, role playing. This is something that works very well when you're doing more creative tasks, right? Like write a blog post in the style of Shashi Tharoor, right? I'll write a very fancy, pretentious one with complicated vocabulary. And this is also a good way to make it not sound AI generated if you need it to. And coming to that point, the last thing is giveaways. Make sure that you don't have responses which are very clearly looking like they're AI generated. Most people can tell. As an AI language model, I say, hey, like make sure you get rid of that stuff. One more recent trend that's going viral on social media is that ChatGPT overuses M dashes, and you can look up what M dashes are and examples if you want to. But nowadays, if I see an M dash overused in a piece of text, I immediately know this was written by ChatGPT. So keep track of what these giveaways are and how they evolve over time if you become dependent on it for writing. And now I'll stop sharing and pass it on to you, Stuti.
Thanks, Pratiksha. I think this sets up us up really well for the last part of the session where we're going to talk about something interesting, which is image and video generation, and a story of our own experience using image and video generation tools to create a product video for our own organization, which was Dango. Before I do that, I'm going to share my screen. Um, Sorry, I'm going to trigger a poll up on your screen and would love for everyone to engage with it. Please let me know if everyone's able to see it. Okay, so the question for folks who are also following async is, if you saw an AI generated content from an NGO, how would you feel? And we have around 12 responses so far. 50% have participated. Would love for more responses to come in. So far, the leading response is curious, that folks would feel curious as to how it was made. Then the second famous response is skeptical, that authenticity might come into question. And the least response is neutral, which means that the least amount of folks think that content matters more than how it is made. We'll wait for one more minute. Okay, we can go ahead and end the poll and I'll quickly share the responses. The two major responses over here is that folks would feel curious and skeptical when they see AI generated content. And that sets us up very well for the story or for the position we were in around 4 months ago. We're at Dalgo, which is essentially the data automation product that Pratiksha and I are part of. We wanted to make a video to explain what a technical platform is and what it does in very simple words. We wanted to make a 1 minute explainer video and we tried using Canva as a tool to create the first cut of it. I'm going to go ahead and share a snippet of it over here.
The audio isn't playing, but I guess that's okay. That's okay. Just wanted to
Oh,
call it out. Yeah.
sure. So, as you can see, this was one of our first cuts of the product videos that we wanted to put up on our website. And while we had done a decent attempt on Canva, the challenge that we were facing when we shared this video externally for feedback with our team as well as other folks was that they don't relate with the video. Because who is it that who's using the platform? It is beneficiaries. It's probably the people like Mira in an organization who are using the platform. But none of those folks are actually represented in a video where we are saying that if monitoring and evaluation folks are spending hours cleaning, where's the visual representation of it on video? Now, to tackle this challenge, we had two options. One is that we could actually invest money in real life footage to get something that could resemble stock imagery and then put it in the video. Second is that we could probably explore something like an AI generated content with the caveat that it would invite either skepticism or curiosity as it comes from all of us. So we decided to go with the second one because from an experimentation standpoint, it felt like a more cost-effective option for us to move quickly. We got the paid version of ChatGPT for image generation where we use Sora. We also use Gemini's free image model to create images. Now, these are examples of the images that we created while in the process of finding the right characters for our story. You'll see that there are two distinct images over here trying to replicate the same thing. And the unique thing about both these images over here is that it is the same prompt, except that they are fed in two different prompt engines. The one on the left hand side was a prompt that was fed into Sora, and the prompt on the right hand side was a prompt that was fed into the Gemini system, but it was the same prompt. At this point, I want to invite someone to unmute and share which version of this image looks more realistic to you.
So obviously the right one.
Okay. And would you like to share why you think that it is obvious that the second one is realistic?
Everything, I mean, nobody writes on the t-shirt. This volunteer
Right.
and you say everything is looks quite fabricated. Yeah,
Right.
I'll think twice before taking the paid version of ChatGPT and using Sora.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what stood out to us also when we were doing image generation through GPT. And we realized that when we are prompting in that we want to create an imagery of two individuals collaborating in an NGO setup, it doesn't necessarily have to be two people wearing a t-shirt that says NGO on it. So when it came to forward thinking beyond the prompt, Gemini was able to engineer logic really well as compared to GPT. However, Aditya, one thing that I will also share is that if you look at the textures of the people over on GPT's image as compared to Gemini, you'll see that there is some kind of an airbrush component to Gemini's images. Whereas to GPT, you'll probably see that the textures probably look more realistic. What do you think about that? Do you think that Gemini does a better job of it or does GPT?
Uh, but still, I mean, the imperfection has the human likeliness. Oh, I'd still give more points to Gemini because this looks too perfect to be kind of true.
Right. So I think that's where the subjectivity also comes in and sets us up for the biggest learning that we had in our journey of creating images with these prompts as well, is that different tools and different engines were able to do different things well. When it came to GPT, it hallucinated in places and it could not generate images that would look realistic. Gemini, it was able to do it really, really well, but sometimes the images looked way too airbrushed and way too perfect for us to use. And once again, that could be a subjective opinion. Based on all of this, what we did was create a universe of characters that could go into that video that you saw in the beginning. And then we moved forward. We worked on another iteration of the product video. And this time we used those images that you saw in the earlier slide. But the problem we faced was that these images looked static. And when you put them in a video, it looked like a slideshow. This didn't really work for us because we wanted to breathe more life into it. And we thought that is there a tool out there that can help us create videos out of images as well? And that's where we realized that there's another interesting tool called runway.ml. So as and when our needs as well as requirements adapted, we tried to think about what is it that will be helpful to put in the video and then whether there is an AI solution that exists to support it before we approach a videographer or an animator. In this case, we used a tool called runway.ml, which was a paid version of the tool, to input this image, which is the image representative of someone working in an NGO setup, to be able to work into their screen looking slightly anxious. Now, just like all other LLMs, Runway.ml also had its unique prompt engineering guidelines. So in Runway.ml, what it wanted us to do is share an image and then share four key things that would feed into a good video output. And that was the subject motion, the camera motion, the seed motion, and the style descriptor. So if we take the image that is static and we want to convert it into a video, we'll say that a monitoring and evaluation officer is typing steadily into a laptop. The camera is slowly zooming into him as he's focusing on his laptop, and the scene generally has some level of concentration and urgency to it. And the final output we got was something like this. So as you can see, it was able to take the prompt, take the image, and then convert it into a 5-second video. And this is how we came to a universe of images and videos that actually went into our final output. And I'm going to go ahead and share that final output, 30 seconds of that final output with you as well. Pratiksha, you're on
Oh,
mute.
yeah. I was just saying the audio won't work now, but you can play it by yourself in the slides.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that. I'll just share. So this was an example of how we use AI as a very real life example into creating one of our product videos. And our learning was that while the advantages of using AI tools such as Runway.ml, etc., is that it helps us experiment and learn quickly, there is some kind of trade-off to it because today the images and the videos of today do not still replicate the real life imagery as we'd like it to be. There's also a lot of bias that percolates into AI no matter how accurate or perfect your prompt is. And that is a limitation. While it gets better and better with time, that's a caveat that we should always operate with. Some of the cons of working with the video generation was also that sometimes the lip syncs or exact requirements that you would like out of characters in a video or an image might not come out as expected, and it might be a dead giveaway to Pratiksha's point in the earlier sections as well as to what can be a giveaway for images as well as videos. It can be the lack of lip syncing or the lack of logic, etc. All in all, we spent around $70 in the creation of this video. This excludes all the time that we spent doing Canva editing, etc., which was an added man-hour cost. But generally, we were able to get the whole video costing using AI tools in under a 10,000 rupees budget. And that was our experience, all in all. So with this, I'm going to give it over to Pratiksha to quickly share how is it that we can take this experience as well as generally keep in mind how we can do experimentation, keeping costs in mind.
Yeah, and I'll speed over this slide a little bit because a lot of this can be self-read. One is that there's a lot of AI tools out there which provide discounts to NGOs. And in my experience, most NGOs don't spend enough time looking into that. Like OpenAI themselves, Google for nonprofits, Microsoft AI for nonprofits, for good. Usually, if you reach out to them and say, hey, we're an NGO, we have this use case, can you help us? They'll get back to you with free credits. So you won't have to pay the same cost that like other big enterprise companies are paying for access to their APIs. Tech for Dev ourselves, we've taken advantage of one of these programs and we have grants through which we get our API keys for use. So definitely spend some time looking into that, researching it, contacting a few of these people, and you'll have an output. Secondly, do a hybrid approach, right? The work that's very time consuming, that's repetitive, automate that, but don't try to automate it end to end, because if you guys have heard of the Pareto principle, right, in 20% of the time you'll be able to get 80% of the output, but that last 20% left at the end will end up taking 80% of your time and resources. So don't try to do anything end to end. Have a hybrid approach, a human in the loop approach, and automate the parts which are quick and easy wins for you guys, and there'll be lots of those in every NGO. Lastly, create or use a prompt bank. So suppose you're still in a workflow where you're dependent on tools like ChatGPT and chatbots, save your prompts and share them with everyone across the organization. You guys will save a lot of time and it'll be very customized to your use cases, and you'll be able to improve the prompts as an organization over time instead of writing it every single time you need to use it. And also, there are existing prompt banks online. Like if you go and Google Hugging Face prompt bank, you'll be able to find one of those. So you can repurpose existing prompt banks on the internet as well for good detailed prompts. And lastly, community and collaboration. There's a lot of good communities online where there are coders who volunteer time to work with NGOs and help build out solutions for them. So look into those as well and take advantage of that, because I think manpower and like technical expertise is the rarest resource for most NGOs. AI can help bridge some of that gap with code generation, but not all of it. So take advantage of those communities online. And if you don't look for it, then it won't come to you. So go try to find it. Yeah. Next slide. So these are tips about when you're trying to build out custom solutions, like custom coding solutions, like the Colab that I showed you. These are a few more technical tips. I'll just quickly go over them, and if you don't fully understand it right now, that's fine. This is for more like advanced NGOs. One is use open source tools wherever possible. So that is what I told you during the session itself. Get a smaller LLM, host it on an AWS server where you'll pay for it with your AWS nonprofit credits, and use that. It's better for PII and privacy, and it'll be free of cost to you. It won't charge you per API call. Secondly, model implementation. This is something I covered briefly as well. Don't go for the expensive models by default, saying this is a complicated task. Start with the smallest model, go up, benchmark the performance, and then see which one you want to go with. And lastly, I'm someone who was an AI engineer before LLMs were a thing, right? And I'll honestly tell you, like the same tasks we're doing now with LLMs, we were doing before with like statistical machine learning methods. So something that we used to call natural language processing. Now, you don't need to know what that is, right? How to use NLP for qualitative data, you don't need to know. But a question that you can ask yourself is, right now I'm thinking of automating this with LLMs and with chatbots. But before LLMs were invented, like 4 or 5 years ago, how are people solving this problem? Because I bet you people were solving this problem even then. It's not a new problem. So there are ways. So don't limit yourself to thinking only about LLMs. Also think about what are the tech solutions that people developed that worked before LLMs that won't charge me per API call, right? That's a one-time investment in development, and then you can run it. And lastly, optimize usage. We talked about batching a little bit today, where you send rows like 10 at a time, 20 at a time. There's other things you can do, like setting token limits, like don't use more than 1,000 tokens on this task. Caching results. So suppose it's something like a beneficiary chatbot, you might have 10 beneficiaries ask the same question to your chatbot. So once the question has been asked, take the result, store it somewhere. Next time, don't send the question to the LLM again, pull it from your database and give the answer to the user. So there's ways like this that you can actually save a lot of costing even when you're building custom solutioning, that you can keep in mind. Yeah.
So I think with this, we come towards the end of our session. And just to recap, that in the beginning of the session, we said that when you have to hire an AI to do any task for you, you have to ask four questions generally. Is it repetitive? Is it automatable? Is it backstage? And can someone review it and stop it at any point that it is making mistakes? And as a follow, we had an activity where each of us picked a verb where AI would feel more useful to our work. So, as an introspection exercise, we'd love to invite you to do this again and frame your suitability or frame something you think could be useful for AI in context of this sentence and share it in the chat section. And Pratiksha can maybe share an example of how that sentence would look like
Sure. Let me just
in the Zoom
quickly
chat.
share the link to the Nearpod again. I'm sending it
Hmm.
in the chat. We really request all of you to go and put in your answers, because there can be good opportunities for cross learning and idea sharing here in terms of what they're doing. Maybe you can learn from that, and so on. So we really do request you to join the link. You don't need to log in or anything. Just join the link, put in your name, and then put in your answers.
Have you shared the code in the chat or should
Yes,
I?
I've shared the link to the Nearpod in the chat. So let me try and think of a good example for this and put it into the collab board myself. Give me a minute.
If if anyone's ready with their answers, please feel free to unmute and share as well.
So I'm not an answer. I mean, we are doing something different at iSection, similar to what Pratiksha was sharing in terms of a prompt library. So we have embedded, we have a Java MySQL based MIS, and we have embedded, we have a lots of qualitative data which we analyze. What we have done is we have stored prompts in our database. And
Hmm.
team members, whoever wants to analyze the data, it basically, so that a query does slicing and dicing of the data, let's say for a particular district or for a particular team member, and they select the analysis. If they want to change the prompt a bit, they can. The prompt auto loads and they push the analysis and they get the result. So, I mean, if those of you in the group who already have a working MIS, so one option is doing Colab or a prompt library. Another option could be directly building these prompts in your MIS itself.
That's a great point. Yeah. And I'm still waiting on people to think through things and put in stuff on the collab board. But while we're doing this activity, are there any questions that people want answered? And while we're waiting here, I just want to point out that we have someone here from Tech for Dev with us, Kartikeya. He's been the founder of AI startups. He knows how AI works really well and how it can be used in the social sector. So if you have any general questions about AI use in the social sector as well, he might be able to help you out, or me and Stuti can also help out. So now is a great time for you guys to ask questions.
You're all are also seeing some responses on the collab board. Okay, so there's a chat GPT tool coming up for a research use case that Suresh has shared.
or data cleanup that my team does regularly. I could share Colab to automate the data cleanup. And then the team would be able to focus on training users better. That's good. And getting that Colab notebook ready will take a little bit of back and forth with a tool like ChatGPT or Cursor. If any of you haven't heard of Cursor, I'll send the link to Cursor as well in the chat. So Cursor is a brilliant AI tool for those of you who want to get your hands dirty with some more technical stuff, where it runs on your computer, it looks at your files and it edits and writes the code for you within your file system. And it has a 14-day free trial as well. So you can experiment with that as much as you want for 14 days. I've sent the link to that in the chat also. But yeah, please do consider doing that initial investment of actually getting that script to work, because then it's a permanent problem that's been solved.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with that, we come to the conclusion of the session, and we just want to reiterate whatever we shared in the time that followed. One is that generally speaking, AI is an assistive plays an assistive role for us. So it is very important for us to identify where it is useful, where it is not, and to be able to walk away and say that this is not what I need to involve or intervene with AI at this point in my time, and there could be a more easier solution for it. I think that becomes the crux of the whole session, and we hope that with this we were able to move um, the concept or the understanding of AI to your use cases within your organization from a place of curiosity to a place of possibility. And now we're going to stay back to answer any questions you had. But before that, I'd love to share another poll on the screen, and for everyone to fill in that poll and share how you felt the session was. This helps us also understand what we've done well, what we can do better for next time. I'm just going to trigger it right now, and you should be able to see it on your screen. The floor is also open for questions, folks, so please feel free to unmute and share.
Either unmute and share or drop it in the chat, but we really encourage you guys to ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, so feel free to ask. And if you want me to reiterate something that I've said before in the meeting, that's fine too.
That's very encouraging, Suresh. Thank you so much.
That's nice to hear. Thanks, guys.
We also want to share that, Pratiksha, do you want to share about what we had planned for the session and we couldn't possibly maybe cover in depth?
So there's a few things that we couldn't cover. So in the previous session, one thing that we couldn't cover at all was data governance and how that integrates with your data pipeline and how it's generally regulated in India under DPDP. And then in this session, one of the things we wanted to, but we couldn't slot in was the risks with AI. We touched on it a little bit with mentions of like hallucinations and mentions of one PII exposure, but we didn't really go in depth. So I think on both of the sessions that we've conducted, some of the more regulatory aspects of things we haven't really been able to touch on, which is something that we didn't have time for. So that's something that you can look into yourself, or if you want us to do another session on that, you can let us know.
Thanks, Pratiksha. With that, we have 7 responses come in. If folks um, could engage with the poll if you haven't already, we'd really appreciate it.
I had a question. So,
Yes, hi, Jasmeet.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
So I had a question. So we do a lot of analysis for the data that we get. So obviously cleanup and analysis. And while we will attempt what you've shared, if we get stuck, can we come back to you?
Oh yeah, you have both of our emails. Please feel free to email me. Um, I I enjoy like helping out and solving coding puzzles, so I'll be happy to do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And before you do that, though, honestly, AI tools are your best friend. You have Gemini built into Colab, you have ChatGPT. You can always copy paste the error messages into them. And the more time you spend working on it, the more you learn. So, just as a personal experience, I'm a backend and an AI developer and a data engineer. So, I work heavily on the backend side of things. Now, there's a whole different kind of coding called front end development, which I really don't know. I don't understand that side of things at all. And if you like left me without AI tools to write a piece of code, I could not get a website working front end wise. But recently I worked on a project where I wrote like 10,000 lines of front end code without knowing anything, all because I used an AI tool and I managed it. So I don't know how to write that code, but I understand some coding and logical principles, and I was able to manage Claude Code. Claude Code is the tool that I used. I was able to manage Claude Code into generating that project for me. So for me as well, that gave me a lot of confidence to do this session, that experience, because I know I don't know front end development. And I was still able to get that done, which means that even if you don't have that knowledge, having some understanding of principles means that you can, be a partner to the AI tool and get stuff done. So I think Claude Code for generating code is the best tool I've used so far. Cursor is really good. ChatGPT would actually be at the bottom of the list in terms of the complexity of the code it can handle, but it is the most accessible, which is why I kind of generated today's Colab with ChatGPT, and the link to the chat is in the deck, so you can read the chat where I did it. But if you have the budget, then Claude Code, Cursor, they're both around $20 a month. So 1,600 rupees per month, and then you can use them on your computer to do like complicated things with code if you want to, like quite complicated things, like enterprise sized projects.
I would also add in GitHub Copilot, which sits at $10. Now, yeah, I mean, one may have an argument over Cursor versus Copilot, but it does the job if you know what you're doing. So.
And I think, I mean, if you don't even need to do external hiring, like if you have people in your team who are excited to learn how to code, who are excited to upskill themselves, give them a project, give them a subscription, and tell them, like, we'll clear up your bandwidth a bit, go ham and see what you can automate in our NGO. Something will come of it. And if nothing concrete comes out of it, you'll have a much more skilled employee in your organization for all of that experimentation that you're doing. So I think if I was in your position, that's something I would really consider doing, which is find someone who's enthusiastic, give them Claude Code and say, go around the NGO, like find out what you can automate and do it.
Folks, we're going to wait for 2 more minutes, and then we'll close on the poll and the session.
Okay.
We're seeing, yeah, Aditya, were you saying something?
You please finish. I mean, if you are giving us only 2 minutes, then I have the vote of thanks to convey to the group. It's been amazing. Yeah, please.
No. Just requesting remnant folks whoever's not engaged with the poll, please do so. And over to you, Aditya.
Amazing. That's what I've been saying many a times within these 1.5 hours. So both of you brought the variety, the width on which we can apply AI, and the way the sessions were conducted gave a lot of confidence, B, clarity, and C, creativity on, I mean, whenever I was seeing, and I can say on behalf of the rest of the group that मेरे दिमाग में यही आ रहा था कि अच्छा ये भी कर सकते हैं फिर अब चल के, okay, my team can jump to this now. And the idea that AI has a lot to democratize in the world, I think, I mean, the way you have delivered this whole session and the capabilities that you shared and the way you give us the confidence that anybody, I mean, without having an experience in coding can also do it was really, really helpful. And it gives us a lot of confidence on moving forward. I think we should do more of these sessions. We definitely need on the risk. Plus, I think one or two more use cases. For example, considering now voice is AI in voice is coming as natural. It will be better in time to come. So how can we help our team members by just letting them ask questions to our systems, and how can they talk to the data rather than writing prompts or something? I mean, so it could be one of the sessions which we can work out. And for people like us, where 90% of our workforce is from villages of Bihar, I mean, these kind of solutions would be really taking the impact to the next level. So thanks a lot to Pradeep sir, Tejas ma'am for basically orchestrating these sessions, and thanks a lot to both of you and the Tech for Dev team for bringing these concepts and topics to us in such an excellent and lucid and easy to learn fashion. Thanks again. Jasmeet,
Thank
you
you.
may
And
want to
I
add
have a
something
few
more.
things. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just thought of one more thing that I should probably share with you guys. And I'm putting a link in the chat box. So this is called Bhashini. And I thought of mentioning it because you brought up your workers in Bihar. So the Indian government is funding like language translation project called Bhashini for Indian languages, Indian dialects, and there's and this is made for integrating with AI. So what I've seen NGOs do who have more like advanced in their AI journeys is they usually use some sort of transcription software like Whisper API to take the audio, convert it to text, and then they convert the text that's there in like Hindi or Bihari, Bengali. They use tools like Bhashini to convert that to English and then send the English prompt to ChatGPT or any OpenAI API, convert it back into the local language, and then verbalize it or give the answer to them in text. So one of the things I want to say here is you can't take the local language directly and push it into ChatGPT. As in, you can do it, but it's not recommended because AI is better at generating quality responses in English because that's the language it's been trained on most data in. So using something like a Bhashini as a middle layer to convert it to English and then convert the English response back to an Indian language would be the way you'd want to think about structuring your pipeline if you want to do this. And Bhashini is a lovely resource that you can check out. I haven't worked with it myself, but I've spoken to a lot of NGOs who use it and I've heard good things.
Thanks. I just wanted to echo Aditya. I think as nonprofits, we've all been attempting to explore AI. हम थोड़ा थोड़ा अपने level पे सब try कर रहे हैं. But coming into a session like this basically just helps expand और क्या हो सकता है. You know, what more can we try? What else is possible which we may not have tried yet? So that was what was really useful for me, because at our end, we collect a lot of qualitative data. We do a lot of analysis. And at this point, while we are using AI, I think it's all piecemeal. I think maybe, especially because a lot of it is repetitive. So maybe we can explore how to do this, how to automate it. I don't know if I have figured how to do it yet, but I have a sense of how it was done, how you showed it. That's why I asked if we could come back to you.
Yeah, no, for sure. You can go through the chat that's there at the bottom last slide of the deck. Go through the notebook yourself. And if you're stuck at any point, just ask ChatGPT the question the way you would ask me, and it'll help you figure things out. There's a lot of self-learning that can happen here.
No, but really, really appreciate the time and the effort you guys have taken to structure this and the time with all of us. Thank you.
Happy to do it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Aditya. Thank you, Jasmeet.